Hey guys, it's your average lady, back at it again with another video. And yesterday I got my second shot of the COVID vaccine, which, even though is a great thing, I now feel like I just want to lay down in bed and stop existing for a day. Unfortunately, even though my body wants me to stop being a human, my mind just wants to do something. And so I thought I would bring you along with me as I embarked on a small, relatively simple, one-day project. Now, usually I would film this in my workshop, but my boyfriend currently is making himself a workbench. It's also a standing desk, which is purely amazing. I'm very impressed. But that also means that all of the free space, including my sewing desk, is currently not very usable. So, and usually I would use this floor, but yeah, that's not a lot of space. So instead, I shall welcome you into my living room. Don't mind the slight misses and the terrible cable management. Management. And yeah, welcome to these floors instead.
Now, since I had some leftover fabric from the DIY curtains I made for my room, I decided to use that leftover fabric to create somewhat of a waistcoat using the top of this dress that I had in my closet. And for those of you who don't know what a waistcoat is, it's alright, I didn't know the real name before. Here's a small picture of what a waistcoat is. And to make that waistcoat, using the pattern of this dress in particular, I simply laid the dress flat on my fabric and traced the outlines of each piece one by one by following the seams, and then added some seam allowance. It's not the best way to do this, especially since that dress had a weird princess seam and really wasn't made for this. But in the end, it worked out okay. I also had to be strategic with my placement of the pieces on the fabric because I didn't have much. And as you saw before I flipped my fabric over, it has a very distinct pattern, which is lines going down. And so all of my pieces had to be in line with that, because if I turned a piece 90 degrees, the lines would be, well, also 90 degrees, so I would have had both vertical and horizontal boys English hard lines on my pieces, and that would have been very weird. Also, I made sure to double my fabric before doing this, so I would only have to cut once to get two pieces, so it would be symmetrical and a lot easier to fit on my body. Now, these pieces were drawn without seam allowance, so I made sure to remember to give myself some seam allowance while cutting out my pieces. Also, when I was cutting out my pieces, I did a noob mistake. I did not mark which piece was which, and in those two pieces, it doesn't really matter. But if we skip over to the piece that matters, this one, you can see that it is almost a rectangle, but not quite. It has a slight curve to it, and that slight curve made a very big difference. you'll see why it's important in the next segment. Also, the back piece was only one, so I had 2 front, 2 side front, 2 side backs, and 1 back. And unfortunately, the back piece could not be done on the same vertical grain, as you might say, than the rest. So I do have one piece that is horizontal instead of vertical, but I think we can live with that. Besides, it's your back. Nobody ever sees the back of you. Unless they're talking behind your back, in which case you don't care if they see the weird things you did in the back of your dress, do they?
So I've got all of my pieces cut out. I'm gonna pin them together and try it on to see if I fit in them. And if I do, I'm gonna unpin it and use those pieces of fabric, well, actually half of those pieces of fabric, to create the lining, which will be made out of a green bedsheet. It doesn't matter if the colors don't match, it's gonna be inside, hidden. Okay, I just finished pinning everything in place, and now I'm gonna try it on. I haven't tried it on yet, so you're gonna get my genuine reaction. So let's go. I also hope I don't pinch myself with all the pins that are in there. Yeah, no, that's definitely not right. What even is going on? What the? I think I pinned the panels in the wrong order, because that is not okay at all. Okay, I'll take it off and try again. Okay, I unpinned and then repinned. I swapped this piece and that piece, like this and like this. And so hopefully that was my only mistake and this would fit. I'd be very happy if it was the case. If not, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Yeah, okay, I think we've got it. The front works for sure. And the back, there's some weird lines going on, but I think this will work once we've ironed it and sewed in the lining. Now what I'm gonna do is unpin that bad boy and use the pieces to trace out a lining. I'll make the lining out of a green bed sheet that I have. It's actually the bed sheet I used to make my poofy sleeve shirt. It's another one of my one-day project. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend you do. And once my lining pieces are traced out, I'll sew them. I'll sew the outside and I'll sew those two together. And I'll meet you once that's done. Okay, so I've sewed both the outer layer and the inner layer, the lining, together. Well, not together, but you know what I mean. All of the pieces are sewn. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna iron these seam open so that they lay flat. And then I'm gonna sew this layer with that layer with the outsides in. So I want the nice part of my fabric, so this part, to lay with the nice part of this fabric, which is this part. We're gonna put them together, sew the edges, and then flip it inside out to get a vest or a waistcoat, or however you want to call the ungodly thing I'm making. Okay, so I've just finished sewing the insides out of my waistcoat, but this is not what I wanted to show you. This is. Look at how little thread I had left.
I really hope I have enough to finish this project. If I don't, well, I don't have the energy to go get more, so I'll just finish it with blue thread or whichever thread I find in this mess that has a slightly resembling color. Let's hope I have enough thread. Okay, so I have some good news and some bad news concerning the thing. As you can see, I just flipped it and pinned the... I don't know that word in English. The loop-de-doop-doop that goes over the shoulder. Straps. The straps. I just pinned them in place temporarily, and I'm going to show you what happens when I put this on. It goes on quite nicely, but it doesn't close unless I... Okay, it's closed. So it doesn't really close, but it's alright. I'm not mad at it. It's given me the opportunity to think about making it ribboned. Ribboned? Ribboned is definitely not a word. This. And that would fix the problem of it not closing, and it would make me able to make it fit very well. And so I'm thinking of that. And also, I have these tie wraps. They're like very thick. I have heard Macau tours call them zip ties you abduct people with. And yeah, that fits the description. They're pretty stiff, but not too stiff, as you can see. So what I was thinking was I could use those weird tie wraps and add in some boning in some strategic places in the vest so that it holds its shape better, but not too much boning because I don't want it to stop me from bending and moving. So, you know, a healthy amount of boning. So I guess today is the day I teach you how to make channels. Alright. So I've got my vest waistcoat here, and I don't know if you can see, but I sewn 2 channels that are 1 centimeter wide in order to run my tie wrap boning right into it. That is the end of that. I have a mark where it ends, and I want to cut about 1.5 centimeters, or like, I don't know, 1/2 inch over it, so that I don't poke through once my seam allowance is cut. And I'm gonna cut some circle edges. It's not that easy to cut it, and those scissors are not that sharp, but we'll get through it. There we go. So we got the rounded edge, and if I push that through, that's a bone. This is almost how they used to bone corsets, actually. But instead of weird-ass tie wraps, they used baleen, which came from Wales, I think, and probably wasn't that ethical. So now when people create corsets, they often use synthetic baleen that is made of plastic. Okay, I just finished hemming the bottom and sewing in the straps. And so now I'm going to show you how I make my eyelets for the closure. So I start with my measuring square, and I'll mark out where I want my holes to be. Now this garment is not meant to be fully closed at the front, so it's alright if it's a bit further away.
Had I wanted to make it fully closed in front, I would have had to make the eyelets a lot closer to one another. Now that this is done, I'm gonna grab my pair of scissors and I'm gonna cut through the hole. I don't want to make a big hole, I just need it to cut through. I need to cut through both the layers, and once my hole is made, I can use a pencil to enlarge it and then use a bigger pencil to get to the size I want. And once I got the size, I'm gonna grab some thread and a needle. Usually it's better to use embroidery thread, but I don't have any of that on me. So I'm gonna use regular thread and hope I don't mess it up. And then we're ready to bind our edges. So I'm gonna grab my thread and I'm gonna poke it about 2 millimeters away from the edge, like so. I'm gonna use my thread to go around the needle and I'm gonna pull in a downwards motion. What I'm doing with that is by wrapping the thread around the needle, I'm making a small knot, and when I pull downwards, that small knot is gonna go bind the edge of my fabric. This is historically how buttonholes were secured. It takes a lot of patience, but it gives great results. And you gotta make sure when you do this that you also grab the back edge so that it's fully secured. I'm sorry I keep going out of frame while I'm sewing. I'm not very used to sewing in front of the camera, so it's hard for me to concentrate on both staying in frame and, well, actually sewing, you know. That is my first eyelet hole complete. Now all I have to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9 more. I'm not gonna bore you with 9 more of these little holes. It should take me about an hour total, so I'll see you guys then. And there we go, guys. I did all 10 of my eyelets, and now all I have left to do is run this ribbon through all of the little holes. I'm gonna do a crisscrossed patterns, and then I'll be ready to show it off to you. And ta-da! There you go, guys. That's what the final product looks like. I am pretty pleased with it, even though some parts don't fit as well as they should, but I'm overall happy with it. I like the little ribbon, even though I do wish I had a green or a brown one. I think that would have looked better, but I only had a gray one, and it looks pretty dapper. So yeah, this is my one-day waistcoat project. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment, even subscribe. We're almost 50 now. That's terrifying. And if you didn't enjoy that video, well, you watched it all. What are you doing? And so without further ado, I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.